bad mistake. Those of you that wrote in and said, I hope Landsberg, I pray Landsberg loses his voice one day. There was return on that email. We will find you. We will get you. And to all of our guests, don't make the mistake of thinking, because I'm a little squeaky, a lot squeaky, that I will back down. No easy days today on OTR. Great to welcome one of the most requested guests that we have ever had from the WCW, the Canadian Crippler, Chris Benoit. Good to see you, man.
It's great being here, Michael.
Welcome back from the Scott Tournament of Hearts. She is here once again. Kim Gillard. Great to see you, Kim Gillard.
You too, Michael. Thanks for asking me.
And Colin Danes, four-time CIAU wrestling champion. Is that real wrestling? Is that what we're talking about here? That's the real stuff,
Hold on
right?
A second.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What he does is real wrestling, right?
That's
is
real
what
wrestling.
he does real wrestling?
I'm not an entertainer.
Oh, well, you know what? I've seen your wrestling. You can bet on that.
Well, it is pretty entertaining.
Okay, I don't know about that. Today, the Maple Leafs have accused the Flyers of running Cujo. Does that make the Flyers a bunch of thugs, or the Leafs just a bunch of whiners? And to paraphrase Megadeth, sex sells. But who's buying? According to Playboy and everybody and the last block, we play some word association with Chris Benoit. But first of all, trade deadline today. This show is taped. All hell could break loose, and in fact has over the course of the day, but we're going to debate the merits of any deal, because when we do that, just shoot us. That's not what we're about. Let's talk about the meat market of the 90s, the auctioning off of talent at the trade deadline. No worse example than Vince Domfus and the Habs. The Habs captain has been dealt to the San Jose Sharks. Why? Because he makes too much money. Can you imagine them trading Richard or Beliveau? He's not in that class. But that's not the point. Is there something wrong with trading a guy like Vincent Domfus, the heart and soul of your team, because he makes too much money?
Not at all. It's a business. If you can't pay him, get him out. Put him somewhere else.
I disagree with that. He's the leader of the team, and obviously he's been a role model for the team throughout the whole season, and we're coming down to the crunch time now. You know, the last couple games in the league, and you know, all of a sudden they're taking their captain, their leader, away.
But if you don't feel you have the money for him, it is a business.
That's what sets him aside from anyone else, is he's a leader, and that's, you know, he can demand that high dollar. I mean, that's what separates all the athletes in professional sports today.
So now he'll lead another team.
Yeah, but then where does that leave the Canadians?
And more importantly, where does it leave the fans? Is it okay to do that? It's dollars and cents, right? You can't afford them, but can you afford to lose a guy like Theo Fleury? You grew up in Alberta, Chris Benoit. What does the loss of a guy like Theo Fleury mean to a franchise like Calgary or the province of Alberta?
Well, look at what's happened to the Flames since Fleury's left. I mean, it's almost as if they've been doing better since he's left. So, I mean, perhaps in dressing room, in the morale in the dressing room, it's changed a bit. But you know, teams adjust and they go on, and it's like the Oilers. I mean, I grew up in Edmonton. And in high school, you know, watching them win all those cups, I mean, I don't think they'll ever put a team like that together again. But, you know, that's business nowadays.
But how about the morale in the dressing room? A guy like Eddie Jones, Los Angeles Lakers, gets dealt to Charlotte. Let me quote him. He says, when I'm between the lines, I always give my all, no matter what uniform. Once I step off the court, I'm not trusting anybody anymore. And who can blame Eddie Jones?
I think that's really too bad. I mean, obviously, I do agree with your point, saying that it is a business, and there are big dollars out there to be made, and players are being paid big bucks. But you also have to have some kind of a life off the court, I just couldn't imagine not being able to trust my boss or my employer. I know.
I think that's a little different to some extent. For one, you're not getting paid millions of dollars. I think that weakens the blow a little bit. When you're getting that kind of money, you can be in it. Sure, it does.
Does it make you?
I don't know. I don't make that kind of money.
No, you're not in the entertainment business.
Well, that's the way it is in professional sports today. It's dog eat dog, and you got to look out for yourself. And I'm just giving my perspective, working for WCW. I mean, it's you got to look out for yourself, because no one else will.
Yeah, but
there's always someone waiting to take your spot. There's always someone waiting to move into you know, your position.
And so I guess, no matter what's happening behind the scenes, you always have to go out there and give your all, even if you aren't happy with the organization. Or
if you love what you're doing, there's a lot of times you know, I get totally bent out of shape because of politics that go on in the dressing room and
there's politics
and
everywhere.
whatnot. Oh yeah, there's politics in everything that you do. But every time I go out there, I mean, I give it my all, because I love what I do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter where you're doing it at. If you were on a team, as far as losing a team leader, somebody else is there to step up.
Yeah, I agree, but I just think there's a certain camaraderie that develops within a team, and I just think it's too bad that has to be disrupted.
Let me ask this question. Colin, you say because they're making millions of dollars, it softens the blow. I'm not sure how much money you make makes it easier to have your family just like that broken up and shipped off to another city. So I'm not sure that because these guys make a lot of money that we can treat them like a piece of meat and expect them to like it.
Well, then they can quit their sport and go find a different job that pays a regular money where they can stay with their family.
Yeah, that's the way it is in you know, throughout the business world nowadays. You'll get a large corporate company, all of a sudden, you know, people wake up in the morning, there's 10,000 jobs laid off. I mean, you know, these are people in the real world that aren't making the dollars that professional athletes are making. So that's
professional athletes know that going in too. That there is a chance that they're going to wake up one morning and be transferred across the other side of the country. But I just think it's unfortunate that this has to happen because it is very disruptive to someone's lifestyle. So.
It is unfortunate, but you know, professional sports nowadays is entertainment, and the entertainment industry is growing so much. It's unbelievable. It's like when will it peak?
Yeah.
There's so much demand out there. It's unbelievable.
All right, we will take a break. We'll make this quick because if you're like me, getting tired of hearing my voice, I'm tired of hearing my voice, or lack thereof. When we return, Cujo foaming at the mouth because of what happened in his crease. Is it okay to go after the goaltender if it means a W? When we return. It is a tough sport. We're talking hockey right now. We're talking about what teams will do to win. Last night, the Philadelphia Flyers beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 3-1. Pat Quinn was irate, not just at the fact that his team was beaten up physically, but what happened to his goaltender, Curtis Joseph. He says they took liberties with Joseph. Let me quote Pat Quinn, the coach of the Maple Leafs. He said, since the league is not going to call it, we are going to have to, quote, start running goalies for the teams who do it to us. First question, do you have a problem with one team running the other team's goalie if they think it can make a difference?
Not at all. Intimidation is a big part of any sport or business for that matter today. I mean, we were talking earlier off camera about, you know, really, you know, loving, like I love wrestling and I love what I do, but when I go in there to negotiate or whatever, you know, it's business and you got to treat it as business, and when you're out there on the ice or in the ring or you know, on the mat, a big part of it, I mean, you try to beat them mentally before you beat them physically.
But I think in hockey there's a certain respect that should be, I think, across the board, that you don't run goaltenders. And I think Pat Quinn said in an interview after the game that Philadelphia has been doing this to them, not just last night, but throughout the whole season. And he's just wondering where the justice is here, because
well, then the league
they're not being called on it. Well, exactly. And
if the referees don't do anything about it, then you have your other guys to step in, the tough guys on the team to take care of that.
Now, obviously, there's you know, the league's got no problem with it if they're not doing nothing with it. I mean, once it gets to be a little too much,
yeah, exactly. That's what the referee's there for. So when he doesn't do his job,
I just think it's going to create, you know, it's just going to be a matter of Toronto's going to have to get their tough guys in to step up to the players that are running Curtis Joseph.
And that's what Pat Quinn is saying. But do you not have a problem with frontier justice? Pat Quinn saying, you know what? If the refs don't call it, we'll take the law into our own hands.
Well, that's just it. How far do you push the envelope? And that's the question. And part of sports today, I mean, is, you know, the team's out there to win. That's what it's about. Right. Out there to win.
And Philadelphia is a big team, and that's probably exactly what they were doing, is trying to intimidate, you know, and see how far they could push it. And obviously they could push it far enough that they weren't going to get called on, and they're getting away with it.
Let's talk about intimidation. You can do it other ways. You can run the team's goaltender, or you can fire the puck at a goaltender's head. This was the St. Louis Blues. Curtis Joseph playing for the Blues way back when. The Toronto Maple Leafs. Look at Wendell Clark. This is a very famous play in that he ripped it right off his mask. They were leading 4-0. Did he do that on purpose? You bet he did that on purpose. Let me ask you this. Is that okay?
Not at all. I just think that goalies are one player on the ice that shouldn't be attacked by the teams on the ice. If two defensemen want to go at it and have a brawl, that's great.
Why shouldn't goalies be attacked? Just nobody can touch them?
Well, they're in their crease. If they come out of their crease, I guess they're in fair play territory.
So a goalie's a key factor in the game. So how about intimidating him, getting on his nerves mentally so that he screws up? He's the one that stands in between those posts and stops that puck. So if you mess him up, then you've come a long way in your game.
What was the result of that?
I don't think that they can prove that he did that on purpose. So I don't think that anything happened to him, probably. Am I right?
There was no repercussion, but it made a statement, which was, you know, look out for us. And, I mean, you talked about it, intimidation is key, and you're saying there's nothing wrong with it, and you're saying there is. Well, NCAA basketball, they're down to the Final Four, and you talk about intimidation, you can do it another way, and that is running up the score. In the tournament so far, Duke has won by an average of about 30 points a game. Duke will face Michigan State in their semifinal game. Duke has run up the score big time. Is that okay if it makes a statement for the next guy?
Sure. Keep running her up.
Humiliate the other guys.
Well, there's no problem with that, because when you're out on the court, I mean, when you're ahead by so much, what are you supposed to do? Play at half speed?
Exactly. You don't want to lose mentally your own game.
Yeah, but you take out the starters, you put the bench, and you say, we're up by 20, we're not going to humiliate them. But that's what they're doing. They're saying, I'm not only going to beat you, I'm going to humiliate you. I'm going to make you look like a fool.
You're in the finals there.
It sends a great message to the team that they're going to play next.
And when you're going into the finals, a lot of it's momentum. When you got that momentum, why would you want to stagger it? Or
I don't know if you guys speak this language, but have you heard of the word sportsmanship before?
Mm-hmm.
You have heard of it?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't that come into play?
I don't think when there's a championship on the line, sportsmanship to a certain extent where you respect the other team, you know, abide by the rules, but in terms of...
Yeah, and sportsmanlike conduct and whatnot, but, you know, in terms of when you're out there, you go... It's full bore. It's 100%
They aren't
all the
doing
time.
anything physically to the other team.
I don't see running up the score like that. When
that's not
different
taking a cheap shot or anything.
Yeah, giving a cheap
Yeah,
shot,
but there's
being a bad
different ways
sport.
to take a cheap shot. No, are you telling me that if you run up the score, you can't be a bad sport because you're not hitting a guy or taking a cheap shot?
I don't consider it bad
Why not?
sportsmanship.
Does that make you a bad player if you're doing your best at all times? Does that make you a bad team?
I think it's up to the coach to say, maybe step back and let's let this team leave the ice with some dignity. Now, you curl, right? If one team's up by a certain amount, they just call it.
I was just going to say that I'll just bring curling into this quickly, but if a team is up, let's say 10-0, we aren't going to start missing shots on purpose.
You call it. So your sport fundamentally acknowledges the fact that there's no point in going on and humiliating someone, right?
Well, and the other team also has the option to concede the game if they are getting beaten by a certain number of points. Like I know that happened to us a couple games in Charlottetown this year where we just threw in the towel and said, I've had enough.
In wrestling, we have a 10-point mercy rule. But if you have the opponent on his back, you still get the chance to pin him. The referees don't call it up after
exactly.
the 10-point
Where a game like
mercy rule.
hockey and a game like basketball, you play, you know, 3 periods, 4 quarters, and you play until the time clock runs out. So it's a bit of a different story, I
So
guess.
Donovan Bailey in a 100-meter, if he's blowing the competition away, should he just let up at the end and, oh, you guys are nothing? Because then it turns around and looks a little bit worse. So a sprinter lets up at the end. That's not the same as running up the score in basketball.
Because he's still trying to get his time.
As a professional athlete, every time you're out there, even an amateur athlete, I mean, there's no matter how far ahead you are, how far behind, if you really love what you're doing, you're going, you're giving 100% at all times.
Yeah, but you're a football fan, right? Football's your game. Football, it is well documented that you don't run up the score. You take out your #1 quarterback, they just don't do it.
It all depends on what sport you're talking about, too. And I mean, it depends.
Football, I don't know why you don't. How about, I don't even know what year it was, maybe '93. The Oilers had a huge lead, and they blew it to go to the Super Bowl.
Against the Buffalo Bills you're talking about.
So where do you call it there? Like,
right,
where's the line where you put in your second stringer?
I like your attitude. Let's go out there. Let's hammer them right to the final whistle, or in this case, the final block of the show. Stay with us more with these three when we return. And when we return, we'll talk about the Nitro Girls. Yes, do you like them? Do you not?
I'm not commenting.
You will when we return. Sex sells. It's not just news here, it's news all over. But the question is, should you use sex to sell your sport? Let's look first of all at wrestling, and then we'll take it elsewhere. WCW uses the Nitro Girls to sell. Now, it's not pure sport. It's referred to as sport entertainment. But let me throw to the three of you, do you have a problem with the Nitro Girls?
No, there's a demand for it out there. It's like a lot of what WWF's doing. Obviously, there's a demand for it. So why not?
I don't have a problem at all. It brings in the people.
I think you have to really be careful as to where to draw the line here. I mean, you don't want to give out the wrong impression, I don't think, because...
What are you talking about?
I think the Nitro, exactly. I think the Nitro Girls are athletic and they look very physically in shape, and so that's great. But when you start talking about their sex appeal and their attraction that way, I have a bit of a problem with it.
What problem do you have with that?
Well, I don't know if it's that it's lack of respect for females, or, you know what I mean? Because males don't really get attacked like that the way females do in that aspect.
Well, it's entertainment. It's part of the show. It's part of the package, and I think.
But it's also. Do you consider wrestling a sport?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So I mean, are the Nitro Girls part of that sport, or are they there?
Well, what about the cheerleaders on the sidelines of football?
They're not exactly dressed in dresses to their ankles. And,
no, I know that too, but they're more. I mean, that's what the public wants to see.
They're wearing a skirt that just covers, you know, barely anything, and they're jumping up in the air and spreading their legs out.
Well, I have the same problem with cheerleaders then as I do the Nitro Girls. I mean, I just think that maybe they're a bit too revealing.
So you should take them out of sport.
Here's the issue. Do they keep female athletes from being taken seriously? I mean, there's no question, there's no debating the fact that there is a demand for it. But because there's a demand does not make it right. And the question is the fallout from that's what we as a viewing audience want from our women, as opposed to watch them putting on a green or whatever. I mean, Sable is a great example of giving the public what they want. Mm-hmm. But as Kim mentioned, you guys have to address this. Does it damage women's sports?
I don't think so. I don't think they relate in any way. I mean, relating the Nitro Girls to you know, women's golf, or I mean, they're just two separate entities.
You don't think it desensitizes the male viewer to expecting to be titillated by what they see on television?
I don't believe so.
I think it does. I think that you can compare women's golf, women's hockey. I mean, women's hockey is really trying to gain respect in Canada and the United States especially, and then when you see girls dancing around in practically nothing, I think that says a lot for females in general who are trying to, you know, gain some respect.
Well, the people that watch Nitro and watch it for the sake of watching the Nitro Girls it's a different core audience than the people that watch women's golf or women's basketball or women's hockey.
I agree with Chris on this. I don't think that the two affect each other at all.
No.
I mean, if you want to, let's just say maybe it brings more people to the beach volleyball matches or the women's tennis matches. I don't think that you can relate the two at all. I don't think that it has an effect on women's hockey. You can't even tell there's a woman out there, for one thing, and it's all in the... No, I'm not saying it in that way, but they're covered up. They have helmets on.
Yeah, they're wearing protective equipment.
Oh, I'm not saying it. They're covering their body in that way, right? That you can't tell, basically, from a distance if it's a man or a woman, and it's the level of play that people are watching it for. They're not... People aren't tuning in, or not tuning in, to women's hockey because...
But I think the only reason that people are watching the Nitro Girls is because they're dancing around practically naked.
Maybe so you have a different audience. Like
we will take a break. Sorry, I got to cut you guys off. We got to go to break. Let us know what you think about the sexuality of sports. Here's an email. I'm not going to burden you by reading it. You'll see our email address, our fax number, the rest. Be back in a moment. Time winding down on the show. Let me throw it out to you guys. What's up?
We're going to be here next Monday for Nitro. It's the first Nitro ever in Canada at the Air Canada Centre. The card's going to be loaded. Bret Hart's going to be there, Chris Jericho, myself, Hogan.
Sounds like fun. Kim?
Our season's pretty much done. We're playing, we've got one charity event left on Easter weekend called the Curl for Kids. It's being played at the Avonlea Curling Club in Toronto, and they're flying in celebrity skips from across the country. And we're raising money for the Hugh McMillan Centre in Toronto.
Do you have people in the media competing as well, like going into it?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but I have an entry form in my bag.
I was going to be upset that you didn't ask me. All right. Chris, I've got to play a little word association. We do this with all the wrestlers. You can use one word to describe it or just a sentence if you want. I'll throw out a name. Kevin Nash.
Innovative.
Eric Bischoff.
Somewhat of a genius.
Somewhat of a genius. Vince McMahon. You had a tryout, right?
Yes,
One-match tryout with the WWF. Vince McMahon.
I've got a lot of respect for what he's done. He's rolled with the times, and he's made the necessary changes to stay on top.
Chris Jericho.
I've got a lot of respect for him. He's a close personal friend, and he's one of the few wrestlers that has completely done it on his own.
Bret Hart.
Legend.
Right. There's good legends, and then there's bad legends.
He's a great legend.
Are they misusing him in the WCW? Because
totally.
It's a real art, isn't it, to taking a guy who's a great wrestler physically and making him worthwhile within your organization.
Wrestling is an art. It's a form of art, and you know, Bret Hart is one of the few men out there that can go out there and actually.
Chris, Kim, Colin, I got to cut you off because that's it. Thanks for joining us in OTR.
Thanks.
Off the Record with Michael Landsberg is brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends, see you tonight. Michael Landsberg's clothing, courtesy for you.